Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Michael. We do really appreciate VIA and everything that you do. I wish I had been able to listen to that last session, but I guess it's recorded, so I can go back. My name is Cheryl Moorhead, and I run the capital markets group for Sunstone Properties. We own and operate workforce housing, specializing in value add and opportunistic strategies. We're headquartered in Southern California. We invest in 10 states, primarily in the Sun Belt, but we focus on affordable, high growth submarkets. Our projects vary quite a bit in scope. We do the typical upgrade, repositioning, but we also take on some more challenging properties where we see a unique opportunity that some people don't see or don't dare to take on. We're able to do this in large part because of the person that I'm going to introduce. Rob Egbert is Managing Director of Construction Management. He's also heads up Sunstone Builders. The key, we think, to our success is Rob's involvement from the very beginning of every project. He works with the acquisition team. He sits on investment committee and he's part of every investment decision. He also works very closely with asset management throughout the life of the projects. Rob has been with Sunstone for 7 years. He was an entrepreneur in the construction business for a little bit, and he's also a licensed GC. So with that, Rob, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be with you all today. I'm excited that we get to spend some time together talking about, deals that are near and dear to my heart. Opportunistic deals are, while they can be extremely challenging, they are rewarding, which is the, topic for today's discussion. I'm grateful to Michael and Jeremy for the opportunity and Cheryl for that kind introduction. I'd like to take just a moment and, shed some light onto Sunstone and how we operate, because I think that's very critical to how we truly understand opportunistic deals and the investment strategy associated with that. So, hopefully you all are seeing the screen that the presentation that I'm sharing. The question that many folks would ask if they see this slide is, okay, well, really, how does that create value, right? It looks like something that's typical for most investment firms. And I'd like to dig into the weeds a little bit more on this. We have in-house a gentleman who sits across from me, who's an architect here in the Los Angeles area and has been in the business for 30 plus years. We have a strong acquisitions team who also focuses on market research along with the asset management team. I head our development and construction team. Cheryl mentioned, we look for value add and opportunistic deals. We'll do a quick comparison of how we define that for Sunstone's investment strategy. And Cheryl's on the capital markets team. So we all sit here in Westlake Village, California, which is near LA, and that allows us to collaborate with each other. And so as we see opportunistic deals, we can more quickly assess the deal's feasibility, which, for any of you that have had the experience of looking at an opportunistic deal, you probably saw the opportunity, you're trying to pounce on it before somebody else does, or you see a vision that you hope someone else doesn't capture. And so time is of the essence, as it is with all deals. And one of the concerns that you would have with an opportunistic deal is truly understanding the risks that are involved with the deal. And so having this collaborative environment with all the team heads in one location helps us to really, enhance our comfort level and better understand the deal. And that allows us to have more aggressive upfront terms and hopefully in our letter of intent, which allows us to be awarded the deal. It also minimizes the dependency on third-party consultants. It's third-party consultants can be, a blessing or they could be a curse depending on, who they are or, the time in their life and how busy they are. So sometimes you can, be their number one client, and other times you're at the back of the line. So we don't really like that experience of being at the back of the line. So, that's what helped lead us to, this integrated business model. It also helps us to better understand, the hurdles facing, each department within the company. Acquisitions teams looks at things differently than the architect does, and the construction team looks at things different than asset management. So by communicating with each other, we better understand, the concerns of each department, and we can come to a more enhanced agreement and understanding of each other's goals. So with that, let's take a look at what Sunstone defines as value add versus opportunistic. Now, for those of you familiar with the value add space, many of these characteristics will be very well known to you. When we look at a value add property, we focus on the bones of the property. Are they good? Are there any significant mechanical, electrical, or plumbing issues or structural issues that need to be addressed? Because typically on a value add deal, you don't want to see any of that. You want, a functioning, plumbing supply system. You want a functioning electrical system. We don't want aluminum wiring. We want copper, and some of the things that you still see in newer product nowadays. We try to steer away from galvanized piping in our plumbing, and we try to focus on, properties that have copper. And so that, by focusing on a property that's in that condition allows us to then turn our attention towards, the aesthetic or functional enhancement of, the interior units, the amenities, the exterior building, or the site of the property or deal. And really, when we're talking about aesthetics, the finished products inside, lighting, plumbing fixtures, paint, flooring, and so forth, what I like to say are the easier things. Unfunctional, when we all seen them, the 1980s, early 1990s apartment buildings where they have, the drop-down cabinets going into the living area, and it's not, functional when you compare it to today's design standards. So we typically will remove those and drop the bar top down and have an open island. So those are things that are a little bit easier when compared relative to an opportunistic deal. And the last point I make with a value add is your renovation schedule is really focused on optimizing cash flow, which means that, we're going to work with the asset management team to identify what their leasing velocity looks like and match our renovation schedule to that. Now, opportunistic is a whole nother beast. What I would define as opportunistic is, a property or a deal that requires, significant change in its physical condition or in its use. Thinking of adaptive reuse. I think, there are plenty of opportunities out there with office and other asset classes where, you could have an adaptive reuse over to multi, but there are so many challenges going through that process that if you don't know them well, you can really get in over your head. As we've seen some of the pros of opportunistic deals, there are fewer of them and fewer buyers too. So, it's really, you're almost like an artist where you're looking at a blank canvas and trying to figure out what you can do with this deal to really bring it back to life or to, change it entirely. Some of the challenges in that is it requires the ability to capture unique vision, which can be difficult when you're an investment firm that's focused, primarily on value add. To kind of pivot away from that and think about things different can be a little bit overwhelming. You also, we feel like you need to have a strong understanding of the market and submarket. There are a lot of firms that, are in the value add space that are all over the country. And when you're looking at opportunistic deals, it's a little bit more difficult to spread yourself so thin in that type of investment strategy. We like to think of an opportunistic deal more along the lines of a sniper, where you can really pinpoint that opportunity and dig into it. So we typically will only participate in opportunistic deals that are in markets, which are in markets that we are extremely comfortable with. We have those markets, we have a really strong understanding of the MSA and also the submarket in which the deal is located. You're often going to deal with reputation management for these opportunistic deals because there's been, some sort of issue there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I show you all the deal that we're currently working on. But there always is a hurdle with the reputation management of a property because you're looking at whether it was existing multi or an office, and there's going to be a perception involved with that deal that you have to overcome and help convince others of your vision. The last thing, that is a challenge, well, not the last thing, but one of the other things that's a challenge for opportunistic deals is the construction process, the execution of that deal. You really have to have a strong construction team or general contractor in the market in which you're planning to target opportunistic deals. You need to know your numbers inside and out, understand the cost and so forth. And doing so allows you to really, capture deals that others may pass over because they don't fully understand the costs. So with that in mind, let's dig into a little bit the acquisition process for the opportunistic property or the opportunistic deal. So, number one, the deal pops in front of you. You got to figure out, is it feasible? What are the risks associated with this deal? From a high level, we'll often look at, really, you call it the sniff test. Does this make sense, right? Does this work? Are we crazy? And if everybody in the room thinks we're crazy, then, maybe we are, and we need to take a pass on it. But if the deal makes sense and there seems to be an opportunity there, then we dig into the feasibility. And that really requires a team effort. It requires us understanding, what does, the asset management responsibility of this property look like? When does that come into play? What is the sub-market support? What's the overall market appetite, for this type of product in this MSA? And then we dig into our preliminary analysis. We have our acquisitions team, similar to value add, they're underwriting the deal. But then we get into property site visit. This is not like your typical property site visit where you go meet with a property manager and ask her a bunch of questions and she helps you understand, the challenges that are facing the property. Oftentimes the property that's pictured here is a property that sat vacant for 10 years, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in the following slides. But there was no one there to visit with, and the condition of the property was extremely rough, and so you're trying to assess the renovation scope and really get a better understanding of the deal so that you don't waste too much time if it's not going to work, and so that you really understand it and you can get your numbers right from the get-go. Then after we've had a site visit, which is typically by multiple members of the investment committee when we're dealing with an opportunistic deal, we focus in on the opportunity at hand with the investment committee, and we figure out does it make sense for us, right? Does this fit our company goals and investment strategy? And if it does, we get after it. And all this happens, like I said, fairly quickly. We're issuing an LOI. Hopefully we get the deal. Here's a couple other pictures for some eye candy for you all to see. This again is property that sat vacant for 10 years, and you can see that it was in really, really rough condition. This is probably, how these presentations go. We put the hairiest deals out there. This is probably one of our most opportunistic deals thus far. But it's also been a really fun deal, and you'll see some of the after pictures here in a little bit. Getting back into the process, once we've been awarded the deal, our on-site due diligence for these types of properties looks much different than a typical value-add investment strategy or core plus investment strategy, right? So we're walking every unit, we're walking the building exterior, once, twice, three times. We're working through the amenity areas, and most of the time, these type of deals do not have amenity areas. So you're trying to understand what amenities can we place here that will be attractive to the tenant base. You're walking the perimeter of the property, understanding who your neighbors are, what hurdles will you have there that you need to anticipate. And then we're visiting the comparable properties in the submarket again. We really have to understand what our competition is. What do we need to renovate to? What level does that renovation look like? Do we want to be trailblazer in the market where we, the top of the market, or do we want to come in just below and be the value option for future residents in that market? One of the biggest challenges with an opportunistic deal is securing financing. You really have to have a lender or relationship with a lender where you can walk them through your vision. I mean, that's Cheryl, has been phenomenal with Sunstone in managing that process and those relationships. You can imagine, we've all had experiences with bankers where, put a deal in front of them and they look at it and they say, you guys are crazy. There's no way that this makes sense, right? And so it takes some time. It takes, convincing them to, really understand what the opportunity is. Fortunately, with the deal that I've been showing you pictures of, we'd had a few other experiences with deals like this. And so, our lender, we could turn to those deals, and our lender, easily was convinced. They said, I got it. Okay, you guys can do this. You're not just, Joe Smith showing up thinking that, he can take care of this problem, and no one else has been able to for quite some time. During that due diligence process, we're really honing in on the construction budget. And that's where, you can really go sideways in a deal like this. Opportunistic investments typically have quite a bit of unforeseen conditions that you have to account for. And it's difficult to really account for what the unknown is. And so, you have to kind of just guesstimate, right? And so one of the ways that we do that is we seek to always understand what the construction methodology was for the vintage of property that we're looking at, right? So whether that's, office or, retail, and we're doing adaptive reuse, or if it's, existing multi, we understand that construction methodology. And then we can try to account for, different issues that may pop up once we pull the sheetrock away from the walls. We also allocate a higher contingency. We know we're going to be hit with unforeseen conditions. So we put higher contingency into these deals because we're going to need it. Lastly, we talked about, the renovation schedule for a value add deal is matching leasing. And with an opportunistic deal, it's like ground up development. You're going as quick as you can. So we quicken the renovation schedule. We try to get it done as fast as possible. And then lastly, before closing, you're getting your reports back. We're super careful with our environmental reports because, you're dealing with just an atypical deal, right? It's not you're run of the mill. You've got to really focus in on what the report's telling you. And, the other issue that, not necessarily that we've had, but that we know can arise is, you have an appraiser who doesn't really understand the vision. So, you're working with your lender, you're working with the appraiser to really help them capture the opportunity at hand and account for the value of that opportunity. Most sellers, they can somewhat capture the opportunity, the vision. And so they're not just going to, roll over and give the property away. There's a value attributed to that change in use. And in today's market, we're seeing more and more sellers want to participate in that value at the sale process. So All right. Well, I've talked enough about the process. Let's dig into a deal. I know that's more interesting for everyone. So this property is located in Houston. Its new name is Haven at 1600. This is in progress. I was on this property earlier this week on Tuesday, and as you can see, the acquisition price at 17K a unit is a little bit mind blowing. Given where we see today's current environment. This was just almost 2 years ago that we paid that amount, but this property had sat vacant for 10 years. It was impacted by Hurricane Ike, and the owner at that time did not have funds for repairs. So they slowly started moving tenants into other properties that they owned, and then ended up with a vacant property. As you can imagine, let me shed further light into the situation. Right next door to this property is a high school. And so this vacant property has attracted criminal activity, which has been a pain point for the city. And it's been a consistent issue for the city. And the city has seen so many buyers roll through and come visit with them and say that they're going to purchase the property, that when we arrived, it was kind of like the kid who cried wolf. They didn't believe us. And to be fair, we took a run at this property 3 different times, and it wasn't until the 3rd time that we were able to get a deal and put it under contract. And part of the reason for that is we had a seller who was not realistic in their pricing expectations given the condition of the property. So we have a deal that sat vacant for 10 years. When we purchased the property, it had 107 units. We were able to, look for other opportunities and create out of some of the existing units, extra units that put us up to 114 units. And the way we did that is we had an obsolete floor plan. It was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath floor plan. And it just didn't really make sense to have that continue to be part of the property. So we split that up into 1-bedroom, 1-bath units. So that's how we were able to get the extra units. And because the city was so excited about the change in this property, they gladly approved that. So what are some of the issues that we've encountered here? Unforeseen framing expense, both in repair behind the walls and material costs increase. I mean, we were right in the middle of this when we saw lumber start to double and then triple in price. So that was a little bit of a rough experience, but other than that, it's been good. We took the property from a flat roof system to a pitched roof, which is great. It'll help us in our sell value. And more than anything, this property has created an opportunity to, kind of give our investors a double bottom line return, right? They're going to receive a financial return, and also there's a social return that's associated with it for, enhancing the community and solving a problem for the city. Hollister is a similar property, also in the Houston area. You can see, that we feel comfortable doing these sort of deals in Houston. We're also able to add 11 units to this property. We had some challenges here. This property was impacted by Hurricane Harvey in 2018. So we had some challenges with site drainage. We also, had a challenge of a convenience store that was adjacent to the property that was attracted, what would say are bad apples. And we needed to be able to remove that obstacle. And so we purchased the convenience store, and we're able to, make it create an adaptive reuse situation for that convenience store. It's about 4,000 square feet. And we were able to add 8 studio apartments into that area and house our leasing office there. So this property, Hollister, has been great. As you can see, the returns are strong. We enjoyed going through the process here. It was a great experience with the city and with the community. We had a lot of people stop and talk to us about it, and they were pretty excited. So that was fun. At this point, when we're running out of time, we have a few other slides, but I wanted to leave time for questions if we have any. If not, we'll dig into a couple other ones. Jeremy?
Yeah, so I saw one right here from Lynn Cox. How do you know this until you open up the walls and floors? I guess she was referring, question came kind of early on in the presentation, but your overall strategy, she wants to know like how you guys can see these jewels until you open up the walls and floors.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's a difficult process to really assess that accurately. We talked a little bit about understanding the vintage of the property, and a lot of this comes with experience. You go through one, and you figure out what you didn't account for, and you make sure you account for it in the next one. So a perfect example is changing out plumbing supply lines and all the electrical. You quickly understand that, if you think you're only going to change out half the electrical in an apartment, you're wrong. You're going to end up changing all of it. And so you just have to fluff that budget up a little bit more to account for those unforeseen conditions. And then, you also have to understand the construction methodology of that vintage. Framing code has changed, electrical code has changed, plumbing code has changed. And when you get into these sort of deals, the city will require you to bring everything up to code. Most cities have a carve out that, if you're going to renovate 50% or more of the value, or 50% of the value or more of the property, then they'll remove that grandfather clause and require you to bring almost all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing up to code. So that's just something to account for. What other questions do you have, Jeremy? Anything else pop through?
Yeah. So you talked about cities. Do you guys have like a predetermined list of cities that you look at, or like how do you approach, like what's the strategy of approaching a new city that you're going into?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As with most things in this business, it's really relationship based. And so if you're looking at an opportunity, it's tough to just say, I'm going to focus in on this one city and that's it. I mean, even in the city of Houston, there's so many municipalities outside of, the actual city of Houston that, you kind of restrict your opportunities if you only focus on one municipality. So, we follow more so of a process where early on in the deal, we'll sit down, we try to get in front of the mayor. In some cities that's more difficult than others, or the city manager, and we explain who we are, what we hope to do. We focus on the community impact and the opportunity there first, and we start to develop that relationship. And most cities, especially with these sort of opportunities, are very receptive to someone who's seeking to invest dollars into their community. So, we develop a relationship in Dickinson. We were able to develop a relationship with the mayor and with the building department. The same thing with the city of Houston. And it just takes time. It's keeping them updated, constant communication of the execution of your plan. They love when you send them pictures, as you go through the process. They don't want you to spend too much of their time, but they love a quick update. So that solidifies the relationship, because you will have hurdles that need to be overcome along the way. And if you've got them in your corner, then it's easier to overcome those hurdles.
So outside of non-catastrophic events, what's kind of the thought process for finding opportunities?
Yeah, that's it's tough in today's market, right? I mean, a lot of the opportunities have been picked over. We see quite a few for adaptive reuse. You see a lot of, surprisingly, you still see a lot of managers who are mismanaging their properties, right? So you don't see as many D properties out there as we would categorize them, but you'll really see some C- properties where you can go in and do a deeper renovation. It may not be what you would call a complete opportunistic deal, but it may require significant changes like, flat roof to pitch roofs, and really it's, you get into markets and you're driving around and you see something that doesn't look like the rest of that submarket, right? And there's an opportunity. So, you're driving around and you see B-class apartments, and then you see this random, office building, or you see a random retail space that's not really functioning well, or you see a Class C apartment building that just doesn't fit in with the rest. You know, and there's an opportunity to really dig in and understand, you know, okay, what can be done there. Now, of course, it's all dependent on the seller, their expectations and their stage in life or in the investment life cycle. And you know, you're gonna swing at a lot of pitches until you hit one. But you know, when you get one, they're really good deals. The returns are strong. They're fun to do, and you really learn a lot through that process.
Okay, a couple more questions came in, but for the sake of time, what I can do is get them to you. This has been a great presentation. I'll email both of these to you and Cheryl.
Perfect. Okay. Great.
I appreciate the time.
And if you want, you could actually just answer them in the Q&A box as well as an option if you want to stay on.
I can do that. I will stop sharing and I'll tackle those right now.
Perfect. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.